Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is about communicative language teaching, CLT, with its details including its definition, core principles, key features, the best classroom activities to develop communicative competence in children, the role of teacher in CLT, the role of learners, advantages, challenges of CLT, assessment in CLT and conclusion. Communicative language teaching. Discover CLT, a language teaching approach focused on meaningful communication. It emphasizes authentic language use and develops communicative competence. Let's see definition in detail. Communicative language teaching, CLT, is an approach that prioritizes developing a learner's communicative competence, the ability to use language effectively and appropriately in real-life situations, not just knowing grammar rules. It shifts focus from language form to meaning. CLT emphasizes interaction, authentic materials, and meaningful activities, like role plays, discussions, and problem-solving tasks. Learners actively engage in using the language to achieve communicative goals. The teacher acts as a facilitator, creating opportunities for communication and providing feedback that supports fluency over initial accuracy. The core belief is that people learn a language by actually using it to communicate. Let's see the core principles of communicative language teaching. Primary goal. Communication is the central focus of learning. Authenticity. Use of real-life materials enhances learning. Fluency and accuracy. Balancing speaking smoothly with correctness. Skill integration. Combines listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Let's see in more detail. Communicative language teaching, CLT, is founded on several core principles that guide its approach to language instruction. Primary goal, communicative competence. Definition: the overarching aim of CLT is to develop learners' communicative competence, which extends beyond mere grammatical accuracy. It encompasses knowing when, how, and why to use language appropriately in different social contexts and for various purposes. This includes grammatical, discourse, sociolinguistic, and strategic competence. Details: learners aren't just taught rules, they learn to use language to express intentions, negotiate meaning, and interact effectively in real-world situations. Authenticity. Definition: CLT advocates for the use of authentic materials and tasks that reflect how language is used by native speakers in genuine contexts. This means using real-world texts, audio, and visual materials, and creating activities that simulate real-life communication. Details: exposure to authentic language helps learners understand natural language use, cultural nuances, and prepares them for communication outside the classroom. Fluency and accuracy. Definition: CLT seeks a balance between fluency, the ability to communicate smoothly and without undue hesitation, and accuracy, the correct use of grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Details: while initial stages often prioritize fluency to encourage communication and build confidence, accuracy is not neglected. Errors are seen as a natural part of learning, and conscious attention to form typically occurs after meaningful communication attempts. Skill integration. Definition: language skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing, are not taught in isolation but are integrated within activities. This reflects how skills are used together in real-life communication. Details: for instance, a task might involve listening to a report, discussing it, reading a related article, and then writing a summary or response, naturally blending all four skills. Learner-centeredness. Definition: the learning process is centered around the learner's needs, interests, and experiences. Learners are active participants who take responsibility for their learning. Details: teachers act as facilitators, providing opportunities for interaction and scaffolding, rather than being the sole source of knowledge. Activities often involve pair work, group work, and collaborative problem-solving. Meaningful communication. Definition: language learning happens best when students engage in communication that has a genuine purpose and relevance to them. Activities are designed to elicit meaningful exchanges of information, opinions, or ideas. Details: this moves away from drills that have no communicative purpose, ensuring learners focus on conveying messages rather than just repeating forms. Interaction as means and goal. Definition: interaction with peers and the teacher is seen as both the primary means through which language is learned and the ultimate goal of language learning itself. Details: through negotiation of meaning, feedback and collaborative effort, learners refine their understanding and production of the target language. Key features of CLT. Learner-centered. Students guide their own learning experiences. Interaction and collaboration. Communication among peers is highly encouraged. Task-based. Activities simulate real-life communication tasks. Error correction. Focuses on maintaining communication flow. Communicative language teaching, CLT, is a broad approach defined by several key features that prioritize effective communication in real-world contexts. These features shape classroom practices and the roles of both teachers and learners. Learner-centered, CLT shifts the focus from the teacher as the sole authority to the learner as an active participant. Lessons are designed to meet learners' needs and interests, empowering them to take responsibility for their own learning and engage actively in class. Interaction and collaboration, a cornerstone of CLT, interaction is seen as both the means and the goal of learning. Learners are encouraged to communicate with each other, pair work, group work, and with the teacher, negotiating meaning and solving problems collaboratively. Task-based activities, CLT frequently employs task-based activities, where learners use the language to complete meaningful, authentic tasks, e.g., role-plays, information gaps, problem-solving. The emphasis is on achieving a non-linguistic outcome, making language use purposeful. Error correction, strategic approach in CLT, errors are viewed as a natural part of the learning process, indicating that learners are experimenting with the language. Correction is often handled strategically. Fluency might be prioritized during communicative activities, with explicit correction or feedback provided later to avoid interrupting the flow of communication and maintain learner confidence. Authentic materials, CLT strongly advocates for using real-world language materials, e.g., newspapers, videos, advertisements, real conversations, that expose learners to how language is used naturally. This helps bridge the gap between classroom learning and real-life communication. Fluency over accuracy, initially while both are important goals, CLT often prioritizes developing fluency to build confidence and encourage communication. Accuracy is developed gradually and refined as learners become more comfortable with the language. Skill integration, the four language skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing, are not taught in isolation but are integrated. Activities often require learners to combine multiple skills, reflecting how language is used holistically in authentic situations. Focus on meaning, the paramount feature is that meaning is central. Learners are encouraged to understand and convey messages, and grammar or vocabulary are taught in context, serving the purpose of meaningful communication. Teacher as facilitator, the teacher's role evolves from a knowledge dispenser to a facilitator, guide, and monitor. They create communicative opportunities, provide support, and manage the learning environment. Activities in CLT. Role play and simulations. Information gap activities. Problem-solving tasks. Discussions and debates. Ordering food scenarios. Giving directions and interviews. Communicative language teaching, CLT, emphasizes activities that promote genuine interaction and meaningful language use. Here are some of the major activities used in CLT classrooms. Role play and simulation. Details, learners take on specific roles, e.g., customer and salesperson, doctor and patient, and act out real-life scenarios. This allows them to practice language in a safe, interactive, and often spontaneous way, building confidence for real-world encounters. Example, a group of students simulates a travel agency, with some acting as agents and others as clients planning a trip. Information gap activities. Details, these tasks require learners to exchange information because each participant has only a part of the total information needed to complete a task. They must communicate effectively to fill the gap. Example, two students have incomplete timetables. They ask each other questions to fill in the missing class times. Problem-solving tasks. Details, learners work collaboratively to find solutions to a given problem. This necessitates discussion, negotiation, persuasion, and making decisions using the target language. Example, students are presented with a hypothetical community issue, e.g., traffic congestion, and must brainstorm and agree on solutions. Discussions and debates. Details: learners engage in open-ended conversations about various topics, expressing opinions, agreeing or disagreeing, and supporting their viewpoints. This fosters critical thinking and spontaneous language use. Example: a class debates the pros and cons of online learning or discusses current environmental issues. Ordering food scenarios. Details: a very practical role-play that focuses on functional language for common situations. Learners practice vocabulary and phrases related to menus, ordering, asking questions, and responding in a restaurant setting. Example: students pair up, with one acting as a server and the other as a customer placing an order from a given menu. Giving directions. Details: learners practice spatial language, prepositions, and imperative verbs by guiding someone through a map or a route. This can be an information gap activity where one has the map and the other has the destination. Example: student A has a map with a starting point, and student B has a destination. Student A guides student B using only verbal instructions. Interviews. Details: learners ask and answer questions, either formally, e.g., a job interview, a news interview, or informally, e.g., finding out about classmates' hobbies. This develops question forming and response skills. Example: students interview each other about their weekend plans or favorite foods, then report their findings to the class. Jigsaw activities. Details: a type of information gap where a larger piece of information, e.g., a story, a text, is divided among group members. Each member has a unique piece and must explain it to others to complete the whole picture. Example: a story is cut into paragraphs, and each group member gets one paragraph. They must retell their part to the others to reconstruct the entire story. Surveys and questionnaires. Details: learners create or use pre-made surveys to collect information from classmates or even outside the classroom. They then analyze and report their findings. Example: students conduct a survey on favorite sports among their peers and present the results using charts or graphs. Story completion/chains. Details: one student starts a story, and then others take turns adding sentences or paragraphs, building a narrative collaboratively. This encourages creative thinking and cohesive language use. Example: the teacher starts, "Once upon a time, there was a lonely tiger." And each student adds a sentence to continue the story. These activities are central to CLT because they create dynamic, interactive environments where learners use language purposefully. By engaging in these tasks, students naturally develop both fluency and accuracy, integrate various language skills, and build confidence in their ability to communicate effectively in real-world contexts, making the learning process highly engaging and relevant. The role of the teachers in the CLT. Facilitator. Guides interactions and learning processes. Activity designer. Creates meaningful communicative tasks. Feedback provider. Encourages improvement and motivation. Assessor. Measures learners' communicative competence. In communicative language teaching, CLT, the teacher's role is fundamentally different from traditional, teacher-centered approaches. Instead of being the sole source of knowledge, the teacher becomes a multifaceted guide who creates and manages a dynamic learning environment. Here are the key roles of teachers in CLT. Facilitator. This is perhaps the most central role. The teacher creates opportunities for communication, sets up tasks, and guides learners to use the language. They encourage interaction, provide support when needed, and help learners overcome communication breakdowns, rather than simply lecturing. A CLT teacher might organize pair or group activities, encourage learners to express their own ideas, and provide scaffolding to help them complete tasks. Activity designer/organizer. Teachers are responsible for selecting, adapting, or creating authentic and meaningful communicative activities and tasks that align with learners' needs and promote genuine interaction. This involves careful planning of tasks, like information gap, role plays, problem solving, and organizing the classroom to foster collaboration and maximize speaking opportunities. Feedback provider. The teacher provides constructive feedback on learners' language use. In CLT, feedback is often strategic, prioritizing fluency during communicative activities and addressing accuracy in a less intrusive way, e.g., rephrasing, noting errors for later focus, to avoid interrupting communication flow. This means the teacher might observe learners during a task, note common errors, and then conduct a focused language analysis session after the task is completed, rather than correcting every mistake immediately. Assessor: teachers assess learners' communicative competence, not just their grammatical accuracy. This involves evaluating their ability to understand and convey meaning, use language appropriately in different contexts, and employ communication strategies. Assessment in CLT often involves performance-based tasks, observation during activities, self-assessment, and peer assessment, moving beyond traditional grammar tests. Resource/guide: the teacher acts as a linguistic resource, providing vocabulary, grammar explanations, or cultural insights when learners genuinely need them to accomplish a communicative goal. They are available to answer questions and offer assistance. Learners are encouraged to initiate requests for help, rather than passively receiving all information. Monitor: during communicative activities, the teacher circulates around the classroom, observing learners' interactions, identifying common errors, noting effective language use, and assessing progress without interfering excessively. This observation helps the teacher gauge where learners are succeeding and where they might need more targeted support or language focus in subsequent lessons. Motivator/counselor: teachers are responsible for creating a supportive, low-anxiety learning environment that encourages risk-taking and experimentation with the language. They motivate learners to participate and help them build confidence. This involves providing encouragement, celebrating successful communication, and fostering a positive attitude towards language learning. In summary, the CLT teacher is an orchestrator of learning experiences, guiding learners towards authentic communication and empowering them to become active users of the language. The role of the learners in CLT. Active participants. Engages fully in communication activities. Self-directed. Takes charge of personal learning progress. Collaborator. Works closely with peers to practice language. Real-world user. Uses language for genuine communicative purposes. In communicative language teaching, CLT, learners take on a much more active and dynamic role than in traditional methods. They are not just passive recipients of information but central to the learning process itself. Here are the key roles of learners in CLT. Active participants: learners are expected to actively engage in classroom activities, initiating communication, expressing their thoughts, and participating in tasks rather than simply listening to the teacher or repeating drills. This means they're constantly interacting, asking questions, and contributing to discussions. Self-directed/autonomous learners: CLT encourages learners to take responsibility for their own learning. They are often involved in making choices about learning content, strategies, and even how they want to be assessed, fostering independence. This could involve identifying their own language needs, setting personal learning goals, or choosing materials that interest them. Collaborators: a crucial role in CLT is working effectively with peers in pairs or groups. Learners collaborate to complete tasks, negotiate meaning, provide peer feedback, and collectively solve problems. Through group work, they learn to communicate and support each other, mimicking real-world team interactions. Real-world language users: learners are seen as individuals who are preparing to use the language outside the classroom. They engage in activities that simulate authentic communication scenarios, applying language in contexts relevant to their lives. This means practicing language functions needed for travel, work, or social interactions, making learning immediately practical. Communicators: fundamentally, learners are communicators. Their primary goal is to convey and understand messages effectively, focusing on meaning even if their accuracy is not yet perfect. They prioritize getting their message across and understanding others, using various strategies when their linguistic resources are limited. Negotiators of meaning: when communication breaks down, learners are expected to actively work to understand and be understood. This involves asking for clarification, rephrasing, or using gestures. This process of negotiating meaning is considered vital for language acquisition. Risk takers: learners are encouraged to experiment with the language and take risks, even if it means making mistakes. Errors are viewed as a natural part of the learning process, not something to be feared. This fosters a brave and experimental attitude towards using the new language. In essence, CLT transforms learners from passive recipients of knowledge into active agents of their own language acquisition journey, preparing them to be confident and competent communicators in the real world. Advantages of implementing CLT in the classroom. Motivation. Enhances learner engagement and enthusiasm. Fluency and confidence. Improves ease and self-assurance in speaking. Communication skills. Develops practical real-life language use. 85% of students report increased confidence speaking. Real-world preparation. Prepares students for authentic communication. Communicative language teaching, CLT, offers numerous advantages for language learners in the classroom by shifting the focus from rote learning to practical communication. Here are some key advantages. Boosts motivation. By engaging learners in meaningful, real-life tasks and discussions, CLT makes learning more relevant and enjoyable, significantly increasing their motivation to participate and use the language. Enhances fluency and confidence. Prioritizing communication and allowing for productive mistakes in a supportive environment helps learners speak more smoothly and spontaneously. This practice builds significant confidence in their ability to use the language. Develops authentic communication skills. CLT trains learners to use language effectively for various real-world purposes, such as expressing opinions, negotiating, or solving problems, rather than just knowing grammatical rules in isolation. Prepares for the real world. Through authentic materials and simulated scenarios, learners gain practical experience in navigating real-life linguistic situations, making them better prepared for actual interactions outside the classroom. Fosters learner autonomy. CLT encourages learners to take responsibility for their own learning, promoting independent thinking and problem-solving as they work to achieve communicative goals. Integrates all language skills. Instead of teaching listening, speaking, reading, and writing in isolation, CLT activities often require learners to combine these skills naturally, reflecting how language is used holistically in real life. Promotes collaboration and critical thinking. Group and pair work inherent in CLT foster collaboration, negotiation, and critical thinking skills as learners work together to understand and express ideas. Disadvantages of CLT. Fluency sometimes prioritized over accuracy. Not suitable for every learning style. Needs resourceful, skilled teachers. Can be challenging in large classes. Some learners prefer traditional teaching. Like any teaching approach, communicative language teaching, CLT, also has its disadvantages and challenges in implementation. It's not a perfect fit for every context or every learner. Here are some of the disadvantages of implementing CLT. Challenges with assessment. Assessing communicative competence can be more complex and subjective than assessing discrete grammatical points. Designing reliable and valid assessments for fluency, appropriateness, and interactional skills is difficult. Lack of focus on accuracy, potential for error fossilization. While CLT aims for a balance, in practice, the strong emphasis on fluency can sometimes lead to learners making and reinforcing grammatical errors. If not addressed strategically, these errors can become fossilized, making them very difficult to correct later. Teacher training and readiness. CLT requires teachers to adopt new roles, facilitator, monitor, resource, and develop new skills in classroom management, task design, and providing strategic feedback. Many teachers, especially those trained in more traditional methods, may lack the necessary training, resources, or confidence to implement CLT effectively. Resource and material demands. Implementing authentic tasks and activities often requires a wide variety of authentic materials, realia, current news, videos, etc., which may not be readily available or easily accessible in all teaching contexts. Large class sizes. Managing communicative activities, group work, and providing individual feedback can be very challenging in large classes, which are common in many educational systems. Ensuring all students get sufficient speaking time and individual attention becomes difficult. Learner expectations and resistance. Some learners, especially those accustomed to grammar translation or audiolingual methods, might expect explicit grammar rules, rote memorization, and error-free production. They might feel uncomfortable with the less structured nature of CLT, the focus on communication over overt grammar rules, or the necessity to take risks. Difficulty for beginners. While CLT is beneficial across levels, pure CLT can be challenging for absolute beginners who have very limited linguistic resources to engage in extensive communication. Some initial foundational language may be necessary. Contextual unsuitability, in contexts where English, or the target language, is rarely used outside the classroom, providing genuinely authentic communicative opportunities can be difficult. The learning environment might not naturally support the consistent application of real-world communication. These challenges highlight that while CLT offers significant advantages, its successful implementation requires careful consideration of the specific teaching context, adequate resources, and continuous professional development for teachers. Yes, like any teaching approach, communicative language teaching, CLT, also has its disadvantages and challenges in implementation. It's not a perfect fit for every context or every learner. Assessment in CLT. Competence focus. Measures ability to communicate effectively. Authentic tasks. Real-life situations for evaluations. 4 skills. Assesses speaking, listening, reading, writing. Rubrics. Measure fluency, accuracy, and appropriateness. Assessment in communicative language teaching, CLT, is distinctly different from traditional methods. It focuses less on isolated grammatical accuracy and more on how effectively learners can use language to achieve communicative goals. Here are the key characteristics and activities for language learning assessment in CLT. Competence focus. The primary aim is to assess learners' communicative competence, which includes not only grammatical knowledge but also their ability to use language appropriately, sociolinguistic competence, coherently, discourse competence, and strategically to overcome communication breakdowns. It's about what learners can do with the language. Authentic tasks. Assessment is conducted through tasks that mirror real-life communication situations. This ensures that the evaluation reflects practical language use rather than artificial classroom exercises. These might be the very same tasks used for learning. Focus on 4 language skills. Integrated CLT assessment typically evaluates listening, speaking, reading, and writing in an integrated manner, as they are used together in real-world communication. For example, a task might require reading an email, discussing it, and then writing a reply. Using rubrics. Rubrics are essential assessment tools in CLT. They provide clear, multi-dimensional criteria, e.g., fluency, accuracy, vocabulary range, task completion, comprehensibility, sociolinguistic appropriateness, and define different levels of performance for each criterion. This ensures transparency, consistency, and objective feedback. Major assessment activities/techniques in CLT. Performance-based tasks. Learners demonstrate their communicative abilities by completing specific tasks. This can include role plays, simulations, presentations, debates, group discussions, or problem-solving scenarios where their language use is observed and evaluated. For example, students might be asked to negotiate a deal, plan a trip, or give a persuasive presentation. Oral interviews. Teachers conduct one-on-one or small group interviews to assess speaking and listening skills in a more controlled, yet still communicative, setting. The interviewer can adapt questions based on the learner's responses. As for example, the teacher asks a series of questions that require extended responses, opinion sharing, or describing past or future events. Information gap activities, assessed. While often used for learning, these can also be assessed. The focus is on how effectively learners exchange necessary information to complete a task, highlighting their ability to ask for clarification, listen actively, and convey messages clearly. For example, a paired activity where students have different parts of an image and must describe their part to each other to identify differences, with assessment on their clarity and interaction. Projects and presentations. Learners work on longer-term projects, e.g., researching a topic, creating a travel brochure, designing a campaign, and then present their findings. This integrates research, writing, and oral communication skills. As for example, students research a local festival in Nepal and present their findings to the class, including visuals and Q&A. Portfolios. Learners collect samples of their work, written assignments, audio, video recordings of speaking tasks, reflections, over time. This provides a comprehensive view of their progress and development across various skills. Example, a student might include drafts of an essay, a recording of a role play, and a reflection journal entry. Observation checklists and anecdotal records. Teachers systematically observe learners during communicative activities, noting specific instances of effective language use or common errors. Checklists can track participation, use of strategies, and specific language functions. E.g., during a group discussion, the teacher uses a checklist to note if students are initiating turns, asking clarifying questions, or using target vocabulary. Self and peer assessment. Learners evaluate their own performance and that of their peers using rubrics or specific criteria. This promotes self-awareness, critical thinking about language use, and a deeper understanding of assessment criteria. After a debate, students use a rubric to assess their own and their teammates' contributions to the discussion. These assessment methods in CLT aim to provide a holistic and authentic picture of a learner's ability to actually use the language for meaningful communication. Conclusion: CLT effectively develops communicative competence. It focuses on real-world language use and participation. Success depends on adapting CLT to learners' needs. Both teachers and learners play active roles. Communicative language teaching, CLT, is a dynamic approach focused on developing communicative competence, the ability to use language effectively in real-world contexts. Its core principles emphasize meaningful communication, authentic materials, and the integration of all four language skills. CLT classrooms are learner-centered, fostering interaction and collaboration through varied activities like role-plays, information gaps, and problem-solving tasks. Teachers act as facilitators, designing engaging activities and providing strategic feedback, while learners are active, self-directed real-world users and risk-takers. The advantages are significant, boosting motivation, fluency, confidence, and preparing learners for real-world scenarios. Despite challenges in assessment, resource availability, and large class sizes, especially in contexts like Nepal, CLT's focus on practical language use makes it a highly effective and widely adopted methodology. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to press bell icon for more videos.